I don't know if they have a real long-term impact on how we view teams, but I do want to talk about a new configuration that we see in the NBA, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers. James
Mhm.
Harden is now a member of the squad. I was in Madison Square Garden for their debut as a new starting lineup on Monday night. It looked good, but it also looked bad, and it also gave causes for concern. Under the James Harden era, they are now 0-2 on the season. Some people might say you give them a break. A road trip to New York City ain't bad, if you know what I mean. With that being said, what are your impressions of how the Harden Clippers are looking through their first two games?
At first, all right, there's a multitude of thoughts that came throughout this whole process. One, it's too early. It's too early to tell. You need to give him time. But at first, when the trade happened, mind you, James is still getting to rhythm, trying to figure out himself. He hasn't played in training camp much. He hasn't played in regular season first 4 or 5 games. So he's had to get some time to get his legs up under him. But he does look like he's in pretty good shape. But rhythm, not in rhythm. Them in rhythm and chemistry wise, definitely not. They have a lot of talent. They had a lot of pieces that and capable pieces of scoring. Right now, they're not doing that. You know, they have a multitude of guys that can put up 20, 30 a night. You would expect them to average about 120. I think the last two games they've been under 100, if I'm not mistaken. I know against the Knicks it was very low scoring, and tonight I think they scored.
Tonight they had 90. Tonight they had 93 overall, 93 points overall. Shot 8 of 36 from three. Only got to the free throw line 13 times, which could be a cause for concern against the Knicks.
Yes.
They lost 111-97. Allowed Julius Randle to get his first 27-point game or 25-point plus game of the season. I think it's the first time Julius hit over 20 this season, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah,
I
they
don't
didn't
know.
shoot.
I think he's
They
had over
haven't
20.
shot. They
Just
haven't
hasn't shot
shot too
well.
well.
They shot well. They shot really well. The last two games, I think the Knicks have. I watched them against the Spurs tonight. They came out hot. But the
Yeah,
cause for concern.
overall from the field, Clippers tonight against the Brooklyn Nets, 36 of 91, 35% from the field. So 39% ain't good, 22% from three ain't good. And when you have a team that features James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, feels like 13 free throw attempts is almost unacceptable. All right, that's that. Those are the stats for you.
For sure. Back to my thoughts and concerns from the start of the trade was who's going to play the defense. You got a couple guys that are very capable, but haven't had to carry that load in a while. You know what I'm saying? PG is a very good defender, so is Kawhi, but they've always had other guys around them to help carry that load defensively with another rim protector. They still have Zoo back there, but when you have a bunch of scorers, naturally they're not as locked in for 48 minutes and putting in that effort on the defensive end of the floor. So when you start all four of those guys, it's like you better outscore teams, because if you don't, you're lacking a lot. You're missing out or losing a lot defensively. And I think that's what they lost in the trade with the four guys they traded away, the depth and the defensive rebounding. Now, PJ Tucker, be one of the defensive guys, will take some charges, give you some grit, can only do but so much. So once again, the concern for me was when the trade happened is who's going to be your defensive stopper, especially on the perimeter. Where are you going to find the defense outside of Zoo at the rim? Who else is going to be a rim protector? Who else besides Norm off the bench is going to give you something? Bones is not playing as much. Terrence Mann, I think his minutes is down. So it's still too early, but there is some cause for concerns for me on the defensive end, especially with the fact that the offense is not scoring right now. So until they find the rhythm and have offense scoring, you better find somewhere on the defensive end to be able to hold teams under 100, which is going to be tough to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this NBA, you might as well try and outscore them because teams are going to get to 100 one way or another. With that being said, I think, what's interesting, as I was watching them play at MSG Monday night, I was like, it reminded me just how damn good James Harden is as a passer. Like his ability, like the passes he makes, his IQ with the passes. And I'm saying to myself, man, Zubac might turn into a double-double guy off the strength of James, because his rolls to the rim, James is going to find him, and you'd be making a mistake. You'd be making a mistake leaving Paul George or Kawhi open if you try to cheat on that roll. So it feels like it could be, it feels like the offense could do its thing. However, Danny, as I was watching the game on Monday night, I was saying to myself, there's two issues. Number one, they're always going to leave Westbrook open, which is why I believe eventually he should be the sixth man. He should be leading the second unit, and they should start Terrence Mann when he becomes healthy. That could happen their next game. He's been out for the last 2 games at the very least. That's number one. And I think Tyler will eventually get there where he puts Westbrook off the bench. And I hope Westbrook doesn't see that as a demotion, because it'll allow him to, be the best version of himself and the team, in my opinion, too. The other thing as well, I started to see it, Danny, and I could only imagine, you might get frustrated if you only get 2 looks, right? I could imagine what it feels like if you're Kawhi. I can't even imagine, but if you're Kawhi, if you're Paul George, if you're Westbrook, and you're like, hey, I should just take this shot. This is a good shot for me. All right, I'm Kawhi, I'm Paul George, I'm James Harden, I'm Russell Westbrook. I'm taking this shot. It's a good shot.
You used to getting 20 to 25 when you're only getting 15 or 12 to 15. It's it can build up.
Yeah, you got to build one. You're trying to get your rhythm. So these guys are used to getting a certain amount of shots so that they could shoot well overall. So not having a shooting rhythm is going to be very difficult for them to get to that point where they're comfortable with that. And then also too, just like how fragmented the offense can be when somebody just breaks off and does their own thing. So 100%. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for them, trying to find a rhythm. And you could talk about it. And
100%.
Trying to have a rhythm with a minimal amount of shots is one of the most difficult things for any player.
And I think that's the other concern that I had is offensively is, I wouldn't say they have too many guys that need the ball in their hands a lot, but kind of sort of that deal.
They're not catch and shoot guys.
No, and even with Russ coming off the bench, he's still going to share the floor with James a lot. And the fact that James is going to have to split time off the ball, he's not going to be able to make the passes that you're saying, the IQ making the plays. Mind you, Kawhi's used to having the ball a lot more in his hands. PG's used to having the ball. I already thought it was a lot of adjusting for PG and Kawhi with Russ being there because he needed the ball in his hands. Even though they meshed and made it work, and they're still making it work, and it was something that they were trying to figure out. Now you add James to that, and it's like, damn, now they're splitting even more time with not having the ball in their hands as much. So them trying to figure it out is going to be harder for all those guys to get into rhythm and stay in rhythm. So that's why I say, a lot of that's going to have to come for them to win games. Defensive end of the floor, they have to figure something out to where, they can get more opportunities offensively. So the more turnovers, the more stops they get, the more pace they get up, the more shots and more rhythm those other guys can stay in rhythm. The more opportunities, you need more shots. And the team that's doing that really well is Indiana. Surprisingly enough. They're putting up numbers right now, bro. Like, they're putting up high scores. And even the other night, there was some high scores. Putting up 150-something points. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, pace is everything, particularly in this NBA. And right now, as I looked at it, I think the Clippers were middle of the pack in terms of pace. But obviously, when you bring a guy like James in, he just plays it's interesting because Westbrook plays at one pace and Harden plays at a totally different other. And they're going to have to try and find the balance between those two. Going to be an interesting experiment, but I still can't be convinced, Danny, that they don't have a shot to beat anybody when it comes down to the Western Conference play.